Hey, this is episode 76 of Decentralized Revolution, podcast from the Mises Caucus, Libertarian Party Mises Caucus. I'm Aaron. I'm your host. This is the first time we've done a live stream version. We've got a couple of big ones planned to do this podcast live with some guests who have a bigger reach, but who are not more interesting than my guest today. I really like James Jenneman. I realized what I was doing there halfway through. But James agreed to his words be my guinea pig for this. I first met James online in the Tom Woods supporters group a few years ago. And when you're in a group online, there's always probably a small percentage of people who do most of the posts. And some of those people are kind of like weird or jerks or whatever. But then there are people who are like, every time they say something is like helpful and nice and great. And James was like one of those. I was like, oh man, every time he says something, like it contributes to it. And he just seems like a great guy. And I've met him a couple times in real life now, and he is. So thanks for coming on, James.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me. We've been going back and forth for weeks trying to hammer down a time to do this. I'm glad we finally worked something out.
Yeah. And tell people just a little bit. You host a podcast called Blackbird, which is named after a Beatles song, one of my favorite Beatles songs. I once played it at somebody's wedding.
Really?
On electric guitar, believe it or not. I kind of arranged it I played it on that Strat back there. Anyway, so tell us about your podcast and tell us a little bit about you and your connection to the Mises Caucus and the Liberty Movement.
Yeah, so Blackbird is, like you said, it's named after the Beatles song. I didn't look up like the meaning of the Beatles song prior to naming the podcast. Apparently, when Paul McCartney wrote it, he was referring to black women, kind of rising up in the civil rights movement. I am not a black woman, so I say that sincerely. Like I don't want to like appropriate the name of a song that was written for one purpose for my purpose. I almost went into cultural appropriation, which I don't really think is a thing, but I want to be sensitive to that. So there's that. The real reason that I named it Blackbird was because of the words to the song. Like we in this age that we're living in, where you don't really know what's real, what's true, what's accurate reporting, that kind of thing, we kind of have to learn to see for ourselves. So like take these sunken eyes and learn to see is one of the things that the Blackbird is called to do. And then we also are in an era where you can be fired for anything from your job. You never know what associations you're going to have next week, tomorrow, in a year. So we have to learn to fly on our own. That does not mean disassociate ourselves from the communities that we're part of. I have made that mistake, I guess, over the last few years of just sort of flitting between different friend groups and circles and tribes and things like that. So I'm trying to solidify also my associations, in addition to solidifying my my sort of projects and things like that I work on. And my partner always makes fun of me because I flit so much. Like I'll have a new idea. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, I guess is a good word for it, because I never actually start a business, but I do have like lots and lots of ideas. So actually we can probably get into that a little bit too later on if you'd like.
Sure.
As for my like affiliation with the Mises Caucus, I actually joined the Facebook group on day 2, which is pretty cool. I pride myself on that. For the longest time, I called myself more of a fellow traveler than a member of the caucus, although in the last year or so, and really half year or so, I've become much more active, and I'm an organizer now and that kind of thing. So I guess y'all have sucked me in.
Yeah. And you're up in Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to get into some of the themes that you've been talking about on your podcast. And correct me if I'm wrong, but like I, as a writer and, kind of things in that space, like I have ADHD, a really interesting case, as my psychiatrist said. And I'm the same way. Like I occasionally finish something and follow through on something, but I start a lot of things, and that's both a blessing and a curse. So do you do that in other areas of your life too? Or is that just on like hey, I have an idea for a business or a project?
Yeah, totally. And it sucks because I work as I call myself like super tech support. I do a lot of customizations and like higher level troubleshooting and things like that. I think my title is actually technical consultant, but it's more of just like a solutions engineer type role for a software company. And that means that I have a lot of plates spinning at any given time. And for someone who flits from plate to plate, like I can keep the plate spinning, but reaching the conclusion, like where I take the plate off of its little peg and put it down on the stack of plates because it's done, that's a struggle for me. It really is. I probably should be on some sort of med for it, but whatever. I don't like meds. So
yeah, I do. I like medication, and Adderall is a great drug if you use it properly. I'm on it right now.
yeah, nice.
But so I wanted to talk about something and talk about this is only kind of loosely connected with the theme of like starting things. And I've been noticing some comments. I kind of lurk on some anti Mises Caucus pages of people and groups. And one of the things that I've been seeing, and it just kind of hit me a certain way lately, was that people criticize us for like, the caricature is like Mike Heist tells us all what to do and we, go in lockstep. Well, first of all, they don't hear the conversations that I have with Mike on the phone and our other board members and organizers have with Mike on the phone, and our board meetings where, we do disagree on things. And sometimes we do get a little upset with each other, but we do kind of we work them out. We present a united front, and then we are organized. And it occurred to me that as someone who's been involved at the LP for 10, 12 years now, that the fact that there is a group that like is organized and accomplishing things and has a vision, that is strange within the Libertarian Party, and people are freaked out. I think they don't know what else to attribute it to, because they think of, I think, a certain type of libertarian, and I like those people, but I think they think that, oh, it's just about doing your own thing all the time, but it doesn't allow for, hey, we can all actually get together, run things in an efficient way, and try to achieve a goal. And do you see that at all? Like, as far as your perception of how the LP has been and what we're trying to turn it into?
Well, I'd like to focus kind of on the marching lockstep thing. So I've had my criticisms for years about how the kind of top of the LP Mises Caucus hierarchy works. I feel like as a monthly donor, I should have a say in who the board is, but that's my position, and that position is welcome, and I'm sure it's duly noted. And I'm sure once it comes time to start picking board members, like, maybe it'll be taken into consideration. But the idea that we are like just some monolith, or I don't know, like a hive mind, is absurd. We argue internally almost as much as the LP itself argues internally. And I don't answer the phone when people call very often, but I do answer when Mike calls, because he's always got something insightful to say. It doesn't mean that I'm gonna obey every command or take every recommendation. And the other thing is, he doesn't call very often. So I think the last time he called was no, I guess I don't really want to get too much into the internal stuff. But he called me to ask me to call off the dogs on something, and I was like, okay. We'll consider it. I don't take orders though.
Right.
We, as the kind of organizers in Minnesota, discussed whether we should call off the dogs on this particular thing, and we decided that it was probably for the best to do that. So the dogs have been called off. And the other thing is, though, our Minnesota guys aren't like, and gals are not a hive mind underneath us. It's not like an organization where we have bosses and that sort of thing. We have leaders, and we have good leaders, and good leaders are able to inspire their followers. They're not barking out orders. They're actually creating a movement. And I think that people who, well, okay, so there's this what I think is a completely wrong view of libertarianism that says that libertarians are these like atomized individualists who can't possibly be part of a group. And, you know, obviously that's absurd. We're part of a political party, for crying out loud. And so, you know, I mean, the idea that people are going to band together who are like-minded and vote the same way, or try to vote the same way, you know, if we can inspire enough people to vote that way, then we're going to do that. And it's no different from being a member of a political party. I mean, Nick Sarwark was on the Soho Forum debate stage saying that people should vote for Dick Cheney if he has an L next to his name.
Right.
That is absolutely no different from saying we should vote for Angela McArdle because she has a Mises Caucus endorsement.
Right. Yeah, and I think that actually your idea about, you know, possibly contributors having a vote on the board, I think certain things like that, like as we get bigger and as we kind of move beyond the larval stage that we're in now, that some of those things might and probably will come up. And I think that's a good thing. I think that one thing that, and I know you're not like attacking things, but the one thing that has helped us actually accomplish things is, you know, I was in leadership in the Libertarian Party of Ohio from about 2010 to about 2016. I was either the Central Committee chairman and I was on the executive committee. And the one thing I found was that overwhelmingly everybody involved there was there to do a job and to try to accomplish things. But there was always like one or two people who just like enjoyed creating drama, manipulating situations to their effect. And because of bylaws, and, you know, we have to, and I'm not saying that it should be different, but as a political party, you have to have, you know, a lot of transparency.
Oh, Aaron has accidentally muted. Oh, it looks like his mic came unplugged. So we'll just sit here and talk. He's still talking, but not unmuted. So good. You're back. You're back. Good. I was scared I was gonna have to ad lib, and I'm terrible at that. So
I once saw there's a bluegrass guy named Del McCurry, who's the greatest bluegrass guy alive today. I've seen him do it twice. He breaks a string in the middle of the song, continues to sing, changes the string, and by the end of the string has it, you know, back in tune and is playing. So I'm not quite as good with the mic thing there, but what I was talking about is that there's always one or two people that seem like that are, you know, that this is like a hobby for them and they get off on drama and they can really hold everything up. And again, with a political party, you have to have transparency and participation. But I think the advantage of a caucus and a PAC is that you can kind of weed out some of those people and keep them from, you know, throwing a spanner into the works. So I think that's helped us, but I think you're right. I think that there are probably things that we need to do a little differently, but I think that's one of the main things that has helped us, you know, actually accomplish some things. And ultimately, if we don't do what our donors and our members want, they'll walk away. You know, and the fact that, and that's not to say that, you know, numbers or contributions is a ironclad indicator of, hey, we're doing the right thing, but it's kind of an indicator. And so I look forward to the time, hopefully after Reno, where, you know, the last year or so, we've spent 90% or more of our time on, you know, reforming the LP, getting a good LNC in there, electing Angela, things like that. But what the other two prongs of our strategy is to, you know, and we have continued to support and fund local candidates, but we also want to get back to, you know, those local initiatives, ballot initiatives, lobbying to encourage local officials to do nullification and things like that. So that's what we really want to do, but we have to have an LP that is supportive of that and functional in order for us to do that. So
I guess I have a question about that. So last weekend, the caucus raised $40,000, which is just insane to me.
Yep.
Is that going to translate to donations to the LP once Angela and team are kind of steering the ship there?
Yeah. That is the hope. And we've been talking about, and I hope I'm not talking about something we meant to hold back, but the details I'll hold back. But that's one thing we are talking about is if everything goes according to plan in Reno, there are a lot of people, myself included, who have only given the bare minimum to the LP.
Mm.
For a couple of years, I didn't give anything because of Sarwark. And then because I said, well, he's in, I'm not going to give. And then now I just only do the minimum, like 25 or $30 or whatever it is. But there are a lot of people who don't give at all, and a lot of people who give minimum. And we are going to encourage the Mises Caucus members and libertarians as a whole to become active members of the LP, active with their attendance and participation as well as their money. And apparently, again, I think this is true. Our source is someone who should know, and in effect does know. But I think that the national LP for a long time they have not. I don't think they even have in place a model where you can be a recurring monthly donor for $5 a month, which for a lot of people, $60 a year, that's not a lot, but it's something. And if you have a bunch of people doing that like we do, it's better than nothing. But the LP does, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I don't think they have that plan in place. And the word that we have is that they don't want to do that. They want to focus more on big donors, and they do have a smaller circle of big donors, and those people have an inordinate amount of power over what the party does. I mean, we've heard stories of people saying, oh, can you back off on the gun stuff because that's not really my issue,
or can you not say a word about COVID?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I don't know exactly how that's played out, but I do know that the LP national, and again, if you can prove me wrong, that's fine. But it's my understanding and my impression that a smaller number of people have an outsized influence because they give big checks, and that those people are not always, and not everybody has to be an ANCAP, but there are a lot of people who on a couple of key issues are kind of, hey, let's not be too libertarian on that. And that's a problem. So to answer your questions, we are going to encourage and to do everything we can to get our people to support the LP. Yes, because I've seen some people are saying that donations to the national LP are down, and it's because of us and all that. Well, you're going to see that turn around. And so I think we are going to lose people who the haters and maybe even some of those big donors. But I think by the time the next convention rolls around, I'd be shocked if the LP weren't on better financial footing. And we're going to do everything we can to make that happen.
I'm surprised that they don't have a mechanism for small monthly donors. Like, I've been in spots in my life where I didn't have $60 in my bank account. Actually, my membership to the party lapsed in I don't remember what year. It was a few years ago, because I just didn't have the money to even for even the student membership, whatever that is. But I don't think I've ever not been able to afford $5 a month. Like $60 a year and $5 a month are monetarily and numerically the same thing, but they're not the same thing when you actually look at an individual's bank account. This year, thank God, I'm for the very first time in my life able to afford kind of a considerable monthly donation. Considerable for me. I'm not rich, but I'm going to become a lifetime member at convention. I'm really looking forward to it. I think the pin ceremony is really cool. It's one of my favorite parts of convention. So it's going to be neat. And I know a lot of people who, assuming that Angela gets elected and all that stuff, and it's not same old, then I'm really looking forward to seeing all the new life members, myself included, up on that stage. So that'll be cool.
That'll be great. And someone else just mentioned in a comment, and I looked it up myself, so I apologize. There is a way you can do a monthly donation. I think that, again, I have this secondhand from somebody who's in that inner circle in the LP national, who I think that what they meant was they haven't tried to promote that and done fund drives to encourage that. And maybe, and again, if they started to do that, but I know that in my time, I've never done that, and I probably would have done that in the past because I did that to the Ohio LP, and I do that with the Mises Caucus. So I think that turning, that's another thing that I think Angela is going to do different. And if you look at like the Ron Paul campaigns and like the Bernie Sanders campaigns, like they weren't on the, beholden to, just a couple of donors like Trump and Sheldon Adelson and guys like that. It was a bunch of people giving $20, $200, $50. So I would love to see the LP be that.
Did Ron Paul invent the money bomb, or was that just the first time I ever heard of it?
I think that someone in his campaign or adjacent to the campaign did that. I just read a book by the guy at Reason, Brian Doherty, Doherty. I think it's just called Ron Paul's Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about it in there. There's a guy basically came up with that. And I don't know if it was the first time, I think, but it was the first like successful one that it raised like a couple $1 million or something in a day. So it's no surprise that kind of works for us. And I was surprised too. Like we were talking amongst ourselves. It's like, yeah, should we ask, maybe try it for 10 or 20, maybe? And so I think that just shows that people are ready for Reno. And I've been blown away too. Like we have of how many of our delegates, and I can't, and I wouldn't if I knew for certain, but so many of our delegates who are booked, they do have their flight tickets and hotel. And so a lot of those people do need a little bit of help when we're subsidizing people. But I've had people, I'm the guy who sends out the email newslettery type things. And I've had people respond to those emails and say, hey, I need help. And then a couple days or weeks later, they're like, oh, I crossed me off the help list because I found a way to make it work, so
nice.
People are really trying to do this. And I'm blown away by that, especially, Reno. That's kind of it's Memorial Day weekend, and it's, you can't get direct flights there to many like I'm driving to Nashville to fly to Denver. I'm driving 3 hours to Nashville to fly to Denver to fly to Reno because I can't get a direct flight from Knoxville to even Vegas. So
try being a Southwest loyalist in a non-hub city. I've never taken a direct flight. I don't think. Maybe to Dallas.
Well, that's why I'm doing Southwest, because I am.
Oh, maybe we'll meet at the Denver airport then.
Hopefully,
like my flight also has a layover in Denver. So
yeah. But yeah, I'm just blown away by people who are doing this. So tell me how. So I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were kind of interested in, or kind of looking into the sort of post-libertarianism thing, or at least talking about it some, and then kind of to come back and be an organizer with the Mises Caucus. What kind of inspired you to do that, and how are things up in Minnesota?
Sure. How are things up in Minnesota? We should do another hour on that. Okay, so post-libertarianism isn't really an ism. It's like postmodernism. We're just entering a new era, and it's sort of a post-ideological era. Nobody cares about ideology anymore, and I think that the LP and the Mises Caucus and libertarians in general need to come to grips with that, because we're way too cerebral, and we've exited the era completely as a culture, not just as libertarians, but we've exited this materialist modernist age. And we are now in an age that's going to be driven by I don't want to say like emotions, but we've entered an age that's driven by connections, by people just doing what feels right to them, if that makes sense, rather than people basing their actions on their principles or their ideology or whatever. It doesn't mean abandon your principles, but it means form your connections based on that, and then form your actions based on those connections. And I encourage everybody to go read LB Muniz's article on this through that lens. So rather than thinking of it as a movement that's in opposition to libertarianism, think of it as just a shift in culture, just like the Enlightenment was a shift from spiritualism to materialism. We're now entering another shift from materialism back into something that's like spiritualism. We've gone through the modern age, and so we're less religious than we were prior to that, but it's no less esoteric and spiritual.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I'm actually reading John McWhorter's woke racism book right now. And like his central thesis so far, and I think he's going to stick with this, is that the woke stuff, especially around the CRT stuff, is kind of a religion for, you know, people who wouldn't consider themselves religious. And I think it all kind of ties in with, I think that the left, and specifically kind of the hard left Marxist type people, like, I think their attack on identity and, you know, community, and in the sense of people belonging to a religion or an ethnic group or a family or something like that, I think they've wanted to attack that and kind of unmoor people from those traditional sort of things, and have, I think James Lindsay said it on Rogan, just kind of an identity without an essence. And I think people like that are sort of very easy to herd into things, and people are going to want to hold on to something. And that's what I think a lot of the woke stuff is people who have, you know, and again, not every family and not every religion and not every ethnic group, like, you know, those things can be very confining too. But if you've rejected every sort of you know, traditional way of belonging to something and establishing your identity, you're going to want to find something else. And if you've already kind of rejected so many things, your options are limited. And that's where I think you're right, and that people they go to something that confirms, you know, their emotions or something like that. And you're right, they don't care about ideology and things like that. And I think that's one reason why I think the decentralized approach is going to has a chance of working. It's not a revolution in a sense of, oh, we're gonna, you know, get 40% of the people to agree with Ron Paul and have a president, and then, you know, repeal all these laws. I think we have to kind of use that, kind of like judo or whatever, use that momentum toward fracturing and try to break up power in that way. And so the local coalitions to, you know, to legalize shrooms in Colorado, and hopefully to do something like, you know, legalize machine guns in Tennessee or whatever, will kind of result in more liberty. And I don't think the cultural problems are necessarily fixed by that, but the harm done by political power, I think, can be minimized.
Well, and it's always been weird to me that there was, and this is lessened in the last few months. I think that the tension has kind of loosened a little bit between the GOP Mises Caucus, led by Andrew. I guess he's doxed his last name now, but Andrew Pierce from Popular Liberty, and the LP Mises Caucus. Yeah, I mean, the strategies are essentially identical, taking over local governments. And, you know, I mean, I don't want the LP to start endorsing Republicans by any means. Like, that's a ridiculous thing. But on the other hand, if there is, you know, a Republican endorsed candidate running for the mayor of your little town, and he's solid on, or she is solid on, libertarian ethics and values, then I think it's foolish to run someone against him or her.
Yeah, I don't. I agree about 80% on that, but I think that it is important sometimes to get, you know, to wave the flag for what we're trying to do, no matter what. But I can see the argument the other way. It's just I hate the Republican Party so much after what they did to us in Ohio with ballot access and lawsuits. And I was once tried to be bribed by he's now the Secretary of State of Ohio. So I hate them. And so I don't hate their people, but I want them to lose. And even though I have a great example of it here in Knox County, Glenn Jacobs, who is a Misesian, and he's 85% good. He's, I think, kind of not so good on a couple of things in like a Republican way. I don't think I'm going to vote for him just because of the R next to his name, but I'm glad he's the mayor and not some rhino or some, Democrat or whatever. Yeah. So, ultimately, like if the two parties were a liberty leaning Republican Party and a good Libertarian Party, that would be great. I don't think that's going to happen, but I see it kind of. I don't know if the American system could ever really take a multiple party thing.
Yeah, no, not with first past the post voting. Yeah. But I mean, that doesn't mean that we can't make a dent.
Yeah. And change the Overton window, right? If we have Republicans talking about eliminating, like I think Ohio of all places, we moved to get away partly from the income tax, and now there's a bill that they're trying to get rid of it up there. So the fact that people are moving to Tennessee and Florida and Texas is, so the decentralization is, I think, forcing some states to reconsider. Now, other states are going to double down. I think California and things like that. But I think that, again, I think the decentralization thing is kind of our only hope for anything. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of reception that gets in the Republican Party. It's like, I think they'll just find ways to, if you look at American history, both Republicans and Democrats, like the Democrats who were kind of, basically somewhat Jeffersonian up until the 1880s or so, when the progressive stuff kind of started happening, they kind of absorbed all that and kind of morphed it. And the Republicans have done that with the liberty movement. So I think the two big parties are always going to be there, and they're always going to, and like the Ross Perot movement and stuff like that, they always get somehow hybridized into the two main parties who don't care about ideology. They just care about power. So, so I think that if this is tried within the Republican Party, I just see that same thing is happening. I don't really see any other way around it.
Yeah, I think, well, and I think the Occupy movement, and then sort of the Bernie Sanders movement that came after, which Bernie Sanders was kind of a tamed down version of the Occupy movement. Yeah. And then also parallel, the Ron Paul movement, and then Trump being sort of a tamed down version of that. Believe it or not, I mean, the Trump movement's not tame by any means, but their ideological stances are. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah. And those sort of parallel things, not only did they they kind of ushered in and are indicative of this sort of paradigm shift that I'm constantly talking about, but they also just blew open the Overton window. I know it feels like the Overton window is super narrow because we live on Twitter, but in the real world, these discussions are being had. The idea, and obviously the establishment, which it goes from CNN to Twitter to your local school to everything else, would love for that Overton window. The welfare warfare state is the norm, and we're not going to change that. They would love to stay. They would love for it to stay exactly as narrow as it always has been. But that is not going. They're going to lose. Like they can't. Yep. They can't maintain their power. It's a stranglehold, and when populists start feeling too strangled, they tend to defend themselves. I hope that they don't defend themselves violently in this case, because I'm alive now, and I would like to continue that trajectory. Yeah. But I mean, we're at the moment of a paradigm shift, and it's inevitable.
Yeah, I think that the whole post 2008 crash thing that kind of created the Tea Party and the Occupy thing. I think Dave Smith has talked about this, and other people, that the whole because the Tea Party and Occupy stuff started happening, like if you track like certain key phrases and them being used in the media, like white supremacy and critical race theory and other problematic things like that, that started happening in Obama's first term, and especially in the second term, and has I think prevented like a convergence of that, of the elements of the right and elements of the left kind of starting to get it. There, when you have a bunch of people camping out outside the Federal Reserve buildings, then it's like, oh, it's time to change the subject. And they definitely have.
Yeah.
And I think that the stuff that's been in academia has been, weaponized by the financial elites to do what we see now. But I think that, it is kind of exciting with, CNN, the CNN Plus thing. Oh, that's one of my favorite things ever.
Glorious. Absolutely glorious.
Well, like 300 to 500 billion, and they got 6,000 subscribers at $10 a month, or the other way around or something.
Yeah.
And like, so that but that's the thing that kind of makes me also worried a little bit, is they know that something is going to change. And they like their power. And so I think we are really entering a very critical moment where things could get really ugly. And I hope it doesn't. I hope we get that national divorce type thing. My wife and I we drove up from Knoxville up to Ohio over Easter. And I think it was on the way up. It was on the way back. So we stopped at a little Mediterranean restaurant in Richmond, Kentucky, small town in Kentucky. I think she must have been the co-owner or the owner, probably my age, mid 40s to late 40s, college educated. She was from Indonesia, and we were kind of talking, and then somehow, and when I'm talking to normal people, I never bring up politics, A, because my wife hates it, and B, because I just hate doing that to people.
Me too.
But she started talking about things, and she basically came out, she's like, and she was like, yeah, I just don't think that the country can stay together. Like California is like different than Kentucky. And like, so she basically, and I just like, yeah, that's interesting. Someone who's an immigrant and not very political is kind of looking at this and seeing, oh yeah, this is not gonna work. So I was really encouraged by that.
Yeah, I think so too. It's because it's just, again, the shifting of the Overton window, or maybe not the shifting, but the widening. I do think though, I guess there's a meme that's been circulating, and a lot of libertarians have been very resistant to this idea that sort of the center is shifting to the left, which looks right on the screen, but it's actually left for me. That the center has been shifting left, and that the left is, and the left, like broadly speaking, and in particular the like cathedral left, aiding and abetting the movement left, the populist left, have shifted the center so far left, and the right, just on issues ideologically, has not, it's gone a little bit to the right, but it's nowhere near as quick or as drastic as what the center and the left have done. And I've seen a lot of libertarians, more like, normie libertarians. I don't like saying centrist libertarians because I think that's a stupid thing. Yep. But which that's been a big thing that's been going all over Facebook and Twitter too. They've been saying, no, look how far the right has gone. You can't just say that the left has shifted so far left, but they haven't. Like, it's I don't know why because we were talking about the Overton window. That's just, it's not accurate. Like, the right has become a little bit more bombastic, but it's not like they believe too much different. They've kind of ported the old protectionist labor left protectionism onto the right now. But that's not a movement to the right. If anything, that's a movement to the left in American parlance specifically.
And I think that the right, Michael Malice's thing about, conservative as a progressive driving the speed limit is very apt. That the right today, I think they basically, and I'm not criticizing this because I feel some nostalgia for, the America that I grew up in the late 70s and 80s. Like, I think the right basically just wants to go back to 1964, that they just want it normal. They're okay with the welfare state. They're okay with the empire. but they just want things sort of more stable
Mhm.
and all that at home. And they haven't been able to, and Jeff Dice says, when the left wants something, they're serious and they get it.
Yeah.
And conservatives are always on the back foot, at least since World War II, if not the progressive era. And that's just not a way to, that's not going to succeed. And I think that as that the Republican Party demographic is getting older, I think they sense that they are kind of losing in one way. And so I think they do get more bombastic and more whatever.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to see where that's going to go.
That brings up a really good point. Aaron McIntyre, he's a right wing commentator, and he and Pete Quinones, who I guess Pete is now more of a right wing commentator than anything, they talk a lot. And one thing that Aaron said on Pete's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his first name right, but one thing that he said on Pete's show was what is it? People who want power will always beat people who just want to be left alone.
Yep.
That doesn't mean people who want power will always beat people who want to be left alone, but it does mean that they will beat people who just want to be left alone.
Yep.
And I think that the populist right, and I do consider libertarianism a right-wing ideology. Because and this is something that I've only very recently come around to. So it's kind of a kind of nascent thought in my head, and I might change my mind in a year. So take that for what it's worth.
Yep.
But the populist right, including Mises libertarians, and including Trumpies too, of there's not a lot of overlap between those groups, but it sounds like there is when you're looking at it from the outside. And I think that's why a lot of the Mises Caucus's detractors think that we're like trying to recruit Republicans and things like that,
Right.
even though they're the very people who recruited Gary Johnson, Bob Barr,
right.
and like
Bill Weld.
Bill Weld. So anyway, we are coming around to the realization that we can't just want to be left alone. We have to take power. We have to take the wind out of these people's sails. Otherwise, they're just going to keep sailing. And that seems scary to people who have seen the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian movement as a debating club.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I think you're right. I think that I'm not, this isn't unique to me, but I really like it. That a lot of libertarians and a lot of people in the other parties too, and in different like left-wing movements, they are kind of just LARPing at politics. They're not accomplished enough, or they're just different enough and appreciate freedom just enough to not fit in Democrats or Republicans, but they like putting on suits and going to meetings and discussing bylaws and
which I love that too. I love that too. Like you'll never see me run for office. I'm obsessed with the behind the scenes bylaws shit. Which is why I'm probably a waste of space. But
no.
but at least I have things to say.
No, yeah.
Hopefully they're interesting and smart too.
No, they definitely are, and it's good but you don't want to do it just to do it. I mean, like again, and I somewhat disagree. Like, is libertarianism left or right? Like, I like to think of it as being non-ideological in the sense of we don't have a specific vision for society that, the left wants, they want society to look a certain way. Just look at every commercial on television for a major brand and look at, Netflix productions, and they have a vision and they will say explicitly what they want society to look like. Conservatives want it to look like 1958. But libertarians are like, yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like. I just want people to be left alone. And so in that sense, it is sort of inherently conservative, because if there's no government power, there's no coercive power trying to remake society, then things like tradition and, all that stuff kind of is inherently conservative.
Yeah.
So I think that we want to stop people with big ideas who want to make, or even the Jacobin type thing, the new, the neoconservatives who they have a vision for the world order and they want to take it to every country, in the world. And so libertarianism is a negation of all that. But you're right. Like we have to, like the bus is speeding off the cliff, and the agorists and the certain type of anarchist will say, oh well, you can't vote, you can't do anything. Where I'm like, yeah, I don't want to get on the bus, but I want to get on the bus, put on the brakes, and then scrap the bus and take it apart for parts. And power does corrupt, so maybe if we ever do take power, that maybe we'll turn to the dark side too. But I'm willing to give that a try.
Yeah, let's hope
Yeah.
that's one thing that really I heard this last night, and it's a little bit of a subject change, so sorry for that. But
That's all right.
I want to point it out as we're kind of winding down a little bit. So I'd like to talk about the nature of power. Um, I've been thinking about it a lot lately, especially having listened to Pete Quinones for the last 2 years or whatever, where he's been sort of morphing from an agorist, or from a normie libertarian to an agorist, to back to Mises Caucus, to now sort of a rightward shift. And but one thing that he's always focused on is Machiavellianism, and especially James Burnham's book, The Machiavellians, and the concept of politics being about power. So that's one thing that I've been thinking about a lot for the last few years. But last night I was listening to the Human Action podcast that the Mises Institute puts out. Jeff Deist and Bob Murphy now are hosting that, and they had Seyfedin Ammous, the guy that wrote the Bitcoin standard and now the fiat standard, on. And I guess Seyfedin Ammous's PhD dissertation was actually about energy economics, and so he's got a really deep understanding of how energy and power works in the like fuel industry and all that stuff. But one thing he said, and I'm sure I learned this in junior physics 20 years ago, but I don't remember it, is that he goes, energy is measured in joules, power is measured in watts, and watts are calculated by energy over time. And that formula, power equals energy over time, really stood out to me, because right now, and especially here in Minnesota, we have never had drama in our LP. The Mises Caucus has had a supermajority on our board for the last year or two, and nobody even knew it, because we didn't do it like as a takeover. It just happened. But then here recently, we at our convention actually organized and actually had slates, and really like our delegation to Reno was going to be a unanimous Mises Caucus thing. The Nygaards have kind of left the caucus under unfortunate circumstances, but in any case, we're going to be kind of going forward, we're going to be a Mises run libertarian affiliate, even though we kind of always have been, or at least have been for the last couple of years. And the tactics that we used this year, and this should be taken as a lesson to states that aren't New Hampshire and Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, where there always has been and always will be a lot of drama. We used the tactics that those states use, where we had like a secret slate that nobody knew about, and we went in and we voted for these people, and it just felt to the sort of normies in the party, or the the unaffiliated people in the party, like they were ganged up on. And some people took it very personally, that they weren't elected to be delegates to Reno, or they weren't elected as at-larges. And from what I've been told, if we had just made our slates public, obviously everybody knows that the Mises Caucus exists and we're going to be voting as a block. But the idea that we came in and did it secretly, kind of as a behind-the-scenes thing, it was described to me as they felt like they were the butt of a joke that they weren't in on. Yeah. And you have to be sensitive to that kind of thing. And so anyway, I've been dealing with the fallout of that as a non-board member, but as a leader in the Mises Caucus. Yeah. And as someone who's friends with the entire board, I've been dealing with that, and I'm starting to run out of energy. I had dinner with our chair last night, and I was like, man, and God, talk about running out of energy. That guy's been run ragged, because it feels like we're being sabotaged in a lot of ways. Everything that we say is taken out of context. Someone heard a rumor that we were going to be endorsing Republican candidates, And so rather than go to the chair, and that person is friends with the chair, like, you know, they have a direct line. Rather than go to the chair and say, hey, what's up with this? I heard that you guys are going to be endorsing Republicans. They posted it in the Libertarian discussion group on Facebook, which is notoriously hostile towards Mises and Mises boards and things like that. Right. So anyway, all the drama doesn't need to happen, right? And it can be avoided if maybe it does need to happen in certain states. I mean, you and I have both been to the PA conventions 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And I don't think, especially for some reason it's in the Northeast. That's kind of where it's localized as far as I can tell. And maybe Texas. But it can be avoided. And not only can the drama be avoided, but the exhaustion that comes from using all of your energy on avoiding drama.
Yeah.
Or I guess damage control can be avoided if you do it right. And so I'm running out of energy. It feels like our chair is running out of energy. It feels like a lot of people are running out of energy. And if power equals energy over time, then this early, a month after convention, that does not bode well for the future of our sort of hegemony in the LP of Minnesota. So we're going to have to re-energize, I think, already. And we didn't need to do that.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like that's one thing that I actually kind of quit the LP for a little while. I got married in 2016 and then was kind of like content to kind of be out of things. And then Nick Sarwark's, Sarwoke, that's what I call him. His Mises Institute is the preferred think tank of actual Nazis, got me re-energized and I found my way to the Mises Caucus. But it is exhausting. And what I've found is that I haven't experienced that as a board member with the Mises Caucus. I don't get involved. I don't watch every state and what's going on. But like our internal stuff goes very smoothly because we don't stab each other in the back and we do talk things out. But politics can get like that. And I think that we do need to have a very conscious effort during Reno and after Reno to keep those doors open to, again, the reasonable people who are non-affiliated or in other caucuses or whatever, to show them that we don't want to kick everybody else out, because as an organization that favors decentralization, like it's fine if you still want to approach the LP in the way that you want to. And if you want to run for governor of a state and stuff like that, we're not saying no one else can do anything differently, but that our focus and our kind of how we operate should change. But I think you're right that there are some people who are going to leave and quit. Some of those people I would probably like to have stay. Some of them, it's probably good that they're going.
Yeah.
But I really do want to do that. And if anybody hears this and, wants to open a dialogue with me or anybody else, like I'm not interested in running anybody off. Anybody who's truthful, has a decent understanding of what character is and is not just an obstructionist or a crazy person, like we want them in the party. And I hope, I know we've been talking about that as a board. And I know in some states that it hasn't been secret and it hasn't been, whatever. It's been kind of open, and that people who have been in the party for a while have welcomed the involvement of Mises people who came in as that. So I hope that we reinforce the things that have tended to encourage that collaboration. And I don't want to see us, again, at some point I envision, and I'm speaking for myself, that the whole idea of a caucus within the LP is not either is not needed, or it's like, it's back to being like on specific, the Christian caucus or the pro-life caucus or the weed, whatever, like a single issue thing that they can then go do their decentralized stuff.
I'm fond of saying that we've got to transition from caucus mode to party mode now. Now that all these states have been quote unquote taken over, which I don't really like that language either, but but they now have to learn how to lead a party, how to run a governor candidate, how to, and that's, that's a big task in Minnesota right now, because we came out of convention without a governor candidate, largely, and I'm largely at fault for that. And I've publicly apologized to the people who care about it in Minnesota, but and I'm apologizing now too for, I didn't understand the ramifications for voting for Noda for governor, for instance. It's a big deal, and we had a really good candidate who has run statewide campaigns before. And I didn't realize this. He had a donor base, he had a staff, all that stuff ready to go. And what we wanted was for him to run for a lower office like auditor or secretary of state or something like that. Of course, another mistake that we made, we didn't talk to him about it. And he wasn't willing to do that because his donors and his staff and all the people that were backing him weren't willing to work on an auditor race. They wanted to work on a governor race. So, we made some missteps as a caucus in the state. I know that's me speaking as me. That's not me speaking as an organizer. There are people who in our state who are either we did the best we can, and this is largely other people's faults. And that's true too. A lot of the drama is coming from other people who aren't Mises aligned. And then there's also the school of thought that says that no, we should really just take a scorched earth approach and completely actually take over everything. So I think I'm probably in the majority, but I'm certainly not in the unanimity.
Well, and I think you're right that again, like Pennsylvania was a special case. And sometimes you do have to be. And I felt bad. Like I felt worse about how things went in 2021, just because, but kind of what they did and not letting people vote and all that stuff. Like it was so craven, and they were, trying to delay and not credential people.
I don't know what they thought was going to happen in 2022.
That's what I remember. It might have been you I was talking to or somebody else, but I was like, wait, so all the people who joined up this year, but not in time and who can't vote, they're going to be able to vote next year. And so they're just delaying the inevitable. Right. And I was like, there's really what's their end game here? And it is what it is. And I guess some of them have started some generic, I don't know, Bill Weld type party in Pennsylvania. And unfortunately, sometimes you do have to write people off in the sense of, we can't deal with you because you're not honest. You're not in this for the right reasons. And I hate that. But I really do hope that, that we can do what we can. So like my encouragement to people listening and in the caucus, and I've said this is, if there are people in Reno, you bump into them in the elevator, and unless they're, and even if I'm in the elevator with like the worst hater, like I'm still going to try to be nice to them, and they might slap my hand away. But like, to me, we can't spike the football. We have to be magnanimous, and we have to try to build those lines of dialogue with people and show. And that's the other thing is a lot of people who hear about us from our detractors and then look at us and then end up joining us. They're like, oh, I thought they were alt-right and this and that. And once I kind of looked and, oh, they're not. So, oh, they're basically Ron Paulians. Okay. So I think that by being, and that's one thing I've said to Mike from early on, is that if we behave ethically and stick to what we're trying to do and don't get down in the mud, that those reasonable people in the middle, not ideologically, but temperamentally, or caucus wise, both inside and outside the party, they're going to see, like, there's a certain contingent we're never going to win over. But everybody else who's looking, we can. So like a lot of times when you're debating somebody, I'm not really trying to convince, like say we're at a bar and there's 6 people and I'm debating somebody on taxation is theft. I know I'm not going to convince the Bernie Sanders guy, but maybe 2 of the people standing there listening to this argument, and we don't attract those people and win them over by by stooping to the level of our worst detractors, I guess. So,
well, and that's the other thing. We have to realize that like people who are watching from the outside really are watching from the outside. Like, this is I sat down with Charlie, our chair, last night. I think I mentioned earlier we had dinner together last night, and one of the things that he told me was like, when you see that someone is accusing the LP of endorsing Republicans, you have to understand that not everyone is going to believe that person. Like, they're spreading rumors, and people don't necessarily always believe rumors. It probably would have been sufficient if I had just responded on that Facebook post. And it was even a comment. It was a comment under a Dave Smith post. Something like, why would you say that here instead of asking the chair? It's not true. And if you had just come to the board, or someone who knows these things, you would have known that it's not true. You didn't need to broadcast it. But instead, what I did was, engage in a long discussion with this person on Facebook publicly. I posted a message in our internal party, not the Mises Caucus, but the actual party Discord, like debunking it, but also using pretty harsh language because I was angry. I'm still angry. I mean, emotions are high right now, and that's included with me. But I could have taken different tactics, used different tactics to do that. Just like we could have used different tactics pre-convention that probably would have prevented a lot of this stuff. So, lessons learned. When you make mistakes, you can either learn from them or sweep them under the rug. And so, anyway.
We'll just do a few more minutes, but I did want to get back to maybe some of the stuff that you're trying to do in your career, and not only with some of the things you've talked about on your podcast, and like I think we started off by talking that it's being, I think we were talking about this, like being dependent on one job or one source of income, and wanting to kind of break free from that and be a little more independent. Not all of us can be Tom Woods and have his little mini empire going, but I think that, and he's
but I'd like to.
No, we'd like to, and like he's been showing people the necessity of trying to do this, and has helped a lot of people. So what have you been doing in that area?
Yeah. Okay. So I've been working with Jason Stapleton, whose name should be rehabilitated because he's awesome. Even if he does have lots of criticisms for us. I've been working with him for a while on business mentorship. So I'm going to be doing, as sort of a side gig. And actually, this is a broader thing too. Like, if you're happy at your job, fine, stay at your job. And if you don't feel like you're going to get fired or whatever, then that's great. Do that. Jeff Deist, who I think that Jeff Deist is the best communicator of libertarian ideas. And I know, like, Natalie Daniel Eishen will tell me, don't assume Jeff's a libertarian. Okay, fine. But Jeff is the best communicator of libertarian ideas in the world, I think. And like, he should be on the Dave Smith campaign and things like that. But anyway, so someone was like encouraging a young member of the libertarian movement to, attend all these libertarian events this year. Oh yeah, you should go to Pork Fest. You should go to Mises U, and you should go to all these things. And he was like, no, I'm not going to a single libertarian event this year. I'm staying home and I'm working on my projects. And someone mentioned Jeff Deist. He said, at Jeff Deist, tell this guy that he should go to Mises U. And Jeff responded, dude, go to church and go to the gym. Like, those were the two things that he should go to, not Mises U. And I really think that, working on your own projects, working on your own health, working on your own spiritual life. Jeff didn't tell him to start a business because, again, he's working for a great company. But that that to me has to be our top priority. Actually, David Brady earlier commented that, you know, if power is up for grab, or if power is for sale, then we should just buy it. That skips a couple of steps, and those steps are the ones that Jason Stapleton's been talking about. You know, stop being poor. Build a business. If you want to have an empire, you got to build it. And you know, he catches a lot of shit for saying stop being poor, but if you seriously, like, it is possible to stop being poor, and you have to do it. So what was I talking about? Right. So I've been working with Jason. We're working on sort of a web development side hustle for me. And parallel to that, I'm going to be building a membership site called Liberty Creators for people who like also believe that creating your own liberty is sort of the best way to go. And so that's in the works. I'm actually going to be working with Tom Woods on it, which is pretty cool. I'm not sure how I'm getting into these inner circles with people like Jason and Tom, but it's neat. And I'm glad that I've got these guys to mentor me. So be on the lookout for that. And then also Blackbird obviously is my podcast, which you can find on all the podcatchers.
Yeah, we'll have links to your stuff that you just mentioned, and a couple of the articles and stuff, and on decentralizedrevolution.com/76. I'll have that up in a couple of days. Yeah, I really appreciate having you on and for your time. And so what one last thing, like what are you going to be? What do you think Reno is going to be like? Who are you looking forward to seeing? Not just like, hey, the business side of things, but just, I know we've all been looking forward to this for at least a couple of years. So,
I will say that the 2020 Orlando convention was one of the best experiences of my life. I'm really hoping the Mises Caucus karaoke party happens again this year.
Yeah.
I haven't heard whether it is or isn't. If it doesn't, that's fine. I'm going to both of Dave Smith's events. I'm really looking forward to that. I am a bylaws nerd, so I'm looking forward to, you know, the actual business part, which is kind of boring to a lot of people. I've been selected to be on the floor team for Reno, so I'll be behind the mic a lot, which is nice. Because I do like to talk into a mic, as you can tell. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm, you know, if Tom Woods and Scott Horton end up going, I'm looking forward to their breakfasts. If they end up being behind the scenes, I'm looking forward to chatting with them. And and Karen Ann, of course. I never pass up the opportunity to give her a hug, even though she usually forgets my name and doesn't know who I am when I am just this random person walking up and hugging her. So yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I'm actually I lied to everybody. Last couple episodes I was saying that I was going to drive, but they finally lifted the mask mandate for good. And
I'm looking forward to flying without a mask on for the first time in 2 years too.
I haven't worn a mask for more than about a year now, except for I had surgery, and so for that and the follow-up appointment to that, but like I've avoided so many things because I just won't do it. And so to be on a plane again is going to be weird, but it's going to be fun. Yeah, Orlando, like I had so much fun there too, and I remember we were all still kind of a little worried about COVID to some degree. And my wife was a little, be careful. And then I remember the first night I was there, we were in a hotel suite with about 200 people packed into like 2 rooms.
Yep. That was hilarious.
And I was like, so well, I'm either getting it or not. And I still haven't got it. So
I posted a picture of that on my Snapchat story, and someone swiped up and was like, where are their masks? And I said, you know, people who want to wear masks are wearing them. Others aren't. You know, we're kind of doing our own thing here. And he said, those people deserve to die, which is, that was actually like, this is the same guy who told me that he had seen people dying in the streets because he lived in New York. And I'm like, no, you didn't see that. That's a lie. Like you're either hallucinating or lying to me right now.
Or you were outside a heroin
exactly.
Shooting gallery. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And ironically, this guy also is HIV positive because he had unprotected anal sex. Like, I mean, like, you know, at least have some self-awareness, enough self-awareness to realize that, like, you know, you can't just say people deserve to die. You sound like the religious right in the 90s saying that you deserve to die. Like, come on.
There wasn't any documented cases of COVID coming out of Orlando. except for a couple people who attended online, as far as I know.
Yeah,
And because we were looking, we were like, please, like, is everybody okay? And like
Yeah.
everybody was.
It's weird all those events in Florida that didn't have outbreak. You remember the Super Spreader Bowl that when the Super Bowl was in Florida too?
Yeah. It's
just
COVID.
nothing.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it, and hopefully we'll get to have a drink or dinner or karaoke or something like that.
Unfiltered cigarette.
That was that. I don't know who you're talking about, James. I don't know who you're talking about. So
sorry. That was somebody else. Jeff Douglas. Jeff Douglas provided me with an unfiltered cigarette.
Yeah, Jeff is horrible on that. So, all right, man. I appreciate it. I'll send you the links to the show notes page and all that. But
okay, cool.
We'll say goodbye and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Aaron. See ya.
All right, bye.